the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Second Amendment Bill 2020. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary जी।
सर, ये सदन हमारे एग्रीकल्चर मिनिस्टर जी से जानना चाहते थे, हमारी भी कोई सवाल है। अगर सर इसमें आप घुसा दिया तो मैं क्या करें?
आप तो इस पे बोल
सर जरूर इसमें बोलोगे, लेकिन सर ये एक महत्वपूर्ण विषय हमारे तोमर साहब ने रखे थे, इसमें हमारा दो चार विचार कम से कम सुन लेते तो अच्छा लगता सर, और कोई नहीं, और कुछ नहीं। क्योंकि सर हमें ये शक है कि आप कांग्रेस की जमाने में जब मंडीकरण हुआ था, आप ये मंडीहरण करने जा रहे हैं, इसी में हमारा शक है। और यह सिर्फ हमारा नहीं, सारे पंजाब से आज रास्ते में आ गए। सारे पंजाब, हरियाणा, वेस्टर्न यूपी के किसान बड़े परेशान है। अब हुआ जाके क्यों नहीं बात करते? यहाँ के क्या मीठा मीठा बात बोलते हैं आप? हुआ आपको जाने का हिम्मत नहीं है।
बिल पे आप सीनियर लीडर हैं। नो
सर एक पंजाब सर एक पंजाब मेंबर को
कभी नहीं होता। आप सीनियर लीडर हैं, आप वरिष्ठ सदस्य हैं। नहीं, सुरेश जी आप सीनियर लीडर है, 7 टाइम के मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट है। स्टेटमेंट में क्लैरिफिकेशन नहीं होता है
सर।
चलो आप नो
सर,
तो जी कैसे नहीं?
that this house disapproves of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Amendment Ordinance 2020, Ordinance number 9 of 2020, promulgated by the President on 5th June 2020. Sir.
माननीय मंत्री जी, आप उन्होंने संकल्प रखा है, आप कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं? 20 पे कुछ हल्का सा बोल दे जरा। मूव करेंगे ना आप?
Sir, with your permission, I wish to move that the bill further to amend the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 as passed by Rajya Sabha be taken into consideration.
माननीय
Sir, first of all, I took a serious exception to the way one after another ordinance are being promulgated on the pretext of COVID pandemic. Sir, yes, our constitution also offered the provision for promulgation of ordinances. But what I would suggest the government, that the promulgation of ordinances should not be taken as a rule. Rather, it should be considered as an exception. But what I am afraid of, that this ordinance-savvy government, on the one pretext or other, resorting to the promulgation of ordinance. Sir, that is why I have put my disapproval. Sir, the ordinance is weakly constructed with minimum logic and a lot of gray areas, discouraging to the healthy recovery and restructuring practices, and at the same time leaving loopholes for debtors. It is nothing but to patronize their preferred corporators. Sir, the worst casualty of this ordinance is the MSME sector. Section 10A can be absolutely the nightmare for corporate creditors. When such a loose exit is created for the escape of debtors, burden will shift to the creditors and they won't be having anyone liable. MSMEs are very strong contributors to GDP as well as employment. There are around 120 million people working in MSME. These MSMEs usually lend their services to large corporates. The IBC framework is the resort of MSME in case of insolvencies or bankruptcies. Until last year, MSME were hugely benefited from the IBC framework. The data on recovery of debt through IBC framework is rupees 1.52 lakh crore. At this moment, the suspension of IBC can be a huge blow to the MSME of our country, especially in cases with exemption of defaulters from the liabilities under Section 10A. If a system which protects and safeguards MSME is dissolved in favor of specific corporate debtors, the government is answerable to 120 million people working in this sector. Because on one side, the government is serving half-baked cookie called Atmanirbhar Bharat and forcing them to take more loans. On the other hand, they are removing from their safety net against exploitation. Can government ask themselves that what have they done to create more through MSME? What is your achievement in last 6 months? This is high time that government should do an introspection. I would simply narrate 4 concepts which needs to be stressed. First, one is the maximization of value of assets. Quoting Mr. Sardul Srop, who is the executive chairman of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Practices, maximization of value of assets can be either revival or liquidation of the corporate debtor. To put its asset to best possible economic use, it is important to have both the options available for preserving the best value of assets. Instead, what we witness is the suspension of IBC framework for a significant period of time. By suspending the whole framework, we are eliminating our option of asset maximization. This is in conflict with the very concept of asset maximization. Secondly, it is the concept of entrepreneurship which is severely hard. If MSMEs are discouraged by withdrawing protection mechanism against risks, what is the signal that government intends to give to the new investors? The bill text say, for any default arising on after 25th March 2020, for a period of 6 months or such further period not exceeding 1 year from such date. Now the government says the validity of the amendment is 1 year. But after 1 year, the government can come again with a further amendment, ordinance, saying that that is the necessity of the hour. Then where should we go? The economy is already dying. The second amendment will be the last nail on the coffin. Why should investors invest their money when there is no guarantee that there will be protection against any chances of losing money? Already, government has been suffering from trust deficit. Honorable Minister, certainly you are agree with me. Thirdly, the availability of credit. The remaining gross NPAs are acting as a barrier for accessing the credits. The gross NPAs are about to hit 15% by the financial year. The credit lending is one of the toughest decisions to make in the current context. Fourth and most important concept is the balance of interest of all stakeholders. This is classic failure in balancing the interest of all stakeholders. There are 5 points to understand how this bill is incapable of catering the interest of stakeholders. Number 1, it prohibits resolution even in cases where that may be the best way to preserve the value of assets. Second, it removes the option of a debtor to avail of the insolvency process for restructuring when the debtor is at the best position to understand whether the company will undergo a crisis temporarily or permanently. Third, this also eliminates the option for debtors to approach for restructuring. Fourth, with the permanent exemption of defaulters during the mentioned period, this is against the interest of the creditor. With this amendment, the corporate debtor gets permanent waiver from default during the specified period. But what about the other kind of debtors in our country? There are individuals such as farmers as well as small farms who are waiting for their waiver. When farmers are committing suicide at one side, the corporate loans get waived off. This is discrimination with the classification of debtors. In short, this bill does not safeguard any of the stakeholders who actually need support during the pandemic, such as individuals, MSME, who actually struggle and lost their livelihood. Instead, the government is saving the corporate debtors. According to Kroll's annual Global Fund and Risk Report of 2017 and 18, India figures among the top 3 countries globally for every category, measuring fraud vulnerability in this survey. Madam, 89% of respondents in Indian organizations saying they had experienced a fraud incident in the previous 12 months compared with just 68% in 2016. India's 89% stands higher than the world average. In the last 2 years, India's numbers jumped from 68 to 89%. Internal financial fraud, 85%, and IP theft, piracy, and counterfeiting, 80%, were also significantly higher than the global average of 52% and 56%. They want to enhance, government on the one hand, want to enhance the atmosphere to establish ease of doing business. But this is what the world thinks about us. This perception would not change with Prime Minister's foreign visit, but will change when government does substantially something to address this issue. Now the government is clearing corporate debtors through backdoors under provision of Section 10A, when financial frauds are skyrocketing and it stands much above global average. The question is, if government does not want to hold the debtors accountable, ultimately who will? Who will? An analysis of the March quarter data from TransUnion Civil suggested that lenders had filed 1251 cases to recover rupees 24,765 crores. All India Bank Employees Association in July 2020 has come up with a list of 2426 willful defaulters, and their amounts adds up to 32,700 crores. The bill will contribute even more to this, as this leaves the room open for intentionally defaulting. Before allowing any more room to willful default, the opposition, as an opposition member, we demand government to bring back our people's money who are already with defaulters. Our country requires 65,000 crores, and government is searching for selling public sector undertakings one by one. Finance Minister, you always say that whatever there is an ordinance introduced is urgent, and they will bring it when Parliament is in session. The urgency, for what for the urgency? The urgency was to save lives earlier. But actually the urgency is to save now willful defaulters. Provision for this was included in the ordinance promulgated on June 5. Will the Finance Minister hold the responsibility from intentional default caused from 5 June to 20th September? This is important to reiterate that the urgency was to pave a way of escape for international defaulting. Madam, for your convenience, I would like to cite some figures before you. In so far as status of application for initiation CIRP is concerned, in the event of a default, creditor-debtor can apply to the National Company Law Tribunal for initiating CIRP. But what is the record of CIRP? The provision of code in relation to CIRP come into force on December 1, 2016. As of June 2020, CIRP has been initiated in case of 3911 application. Out of these, 2108 CIRPs are yet to be completed. Of the 1803 CIRP completed, 955 resulted in liquidation. Resolution plan was approved in 250 cases, only 14%, and 598 cases were closed by appeal, review, settlement, or withdrawal, 32%. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India noted that in cases of CIRP resulting in liquidation in about 73% cases, the economic value of the corporate debtor had already eroded significantly before they were admitted into CIRP. I will give you a figure that in the year 2016-17, 37 applications accepted, but liquidation was only 0. Pending at the end of the period 36. Till 2020-21, out of total 3911 application admitted, appeal, reviews, settled, withdrawn number 598, approval of resolution plan only 250, liquidation only 955, pending at the end of the period is 2108. This is the performance under your leadership. It's an absolutely poor and dismal performances. Time taken for the completion of CIRP. This is also very alarming. The court provides for time-bound resolution of insolvency. The committee of creditors must approve a resolution plan, and the resolution process must be completed within 180 days. This may be extended by a period of up to 90 days. If the extension is approved by NCLT, IDBI noted that average time taken for completion of 955 liquidation cases is 312 days. Average time taken for completion 250 cases in which a resolution plan was accepted is mind-boggling 423 days. As of June 2020, of the 2108 CIRPs yet to be completed, 1094, that is 52%, have continued for more than 270 days. 270 days, number of CIRP 1094. 180 days to 270 days, number of CIRP 539. 90 days to 190 days, number of CIRP 402. 90 days 73, total 2108. Insofar as initiator of CRP, the code allows the creditors as well as the corporate debtor to initiate CIRP. The code classifies creditors between financial and operational creditors based on the type of liability owed to them. As of June 2020, of the 3911 CIRP application admitted, 1961 applications were initiated by the financial creditor, that is 50%. 1690 applications were initiated by operational creditor, that is 43%. And 260 applications were initiated by the corporate debtor itself, only 7%. Recovery of claims under CIRP, most important. In 250 cases where resolution plan was accepted, the debtors owed rupees 4.71 lakh crore on aggregate. Out of this, creditors could recover rupees 196 lakh crore, 42%. IBBI noted that the value of asset of these 250 corporate debtors was only rupees 1.03 lakh crore when they entered CIRP. Hence, the value recovered is about ludicrous 191% of the realizable value. In 952 cases where liquidation was initiated, data not available for other three, the debtors owed rupees 5.3 lakh crore to creditors on aggregate. IBBI noted that these 952 corporate debtors had assets valued at rupees 0.38 lakh crore when they entered CIRP. As of June 30, 2020, only 88 corporate debtors have been completely liquidated. These 88 debtors together had outstanding claims of 11,512 crore. The asset of these 88 debtors valued rupees 181 crore when they entered CIRP. Rupees 192 crore was realized through liquidation of this company. That is 1.7% of total claim. This is the performance of your ministry, madam. Again, I will highlight other issues when my next turn will come.